Moving on, World Food Programme representative and country director Bishow Parajuli has praised Indian government's measures for ensuring food security for millions of Indian citizens during this critical COVID times. United Nations World Food Programme has pointed out that by allowing states to lift their allocation for 6 months in one go is one of those steps. And it also points out that during the difficult times of pandemic, India's robust targeted public distribution system has acted like a lifeline for millions hit by the pandemic. In fact, United Nations World Food Programme says the world has lessons to learn from India on providing food for all, while observing that there has been an alarming escalation in the global hunger. Observing also that while the pandemic's impact has yet to be fully mapped, this multi-agency report titled The State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World estimates that around a tenth of the global population, up to 81.1 crore persons, were undernourished this year. And it's also pointing out that there was a dramatic worsening of world hunger in 2020, much of it likely related to the fallout of COVID-19. Now, we're going to play out the explainer on your screen. Let's take a look at these observations. India's food security response, Food for All, says that the Government of India measures to tackle the food crisis during COVID-19 pandemic were very effective. It points out that country registered a record harvest over the last few years. India's food security response also talks about how India exported a record 1.98 crore tons of rice and wheat in the financial year 2021. So let's now talk about the increased entitlements. Food security scenarios, it says, has allowed Government of India to increase entitlements to National Food Security Act beneficiaries in the year 2020. It also talks about Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Under that, 81.3 crore NFSA, that is National Food Security Act beneficiaries, received additional 5 kg food grains per person per month. It also talks about Atmanirbhar Bharat package, where 8 crore migrants were in fact fully covered. It talks about how government allowed NGOs, civil society organizations to buy rice at the subsidized rates, and how the rice was sold at 22 per kg as compared to the market price, which was more than that, that's 35 rupees per kg, and also the price for wheat at 21 per kg last year. Third phase of the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, it points out that about 89% of the allocation of food grains were distributed to beneficiaries, and the good part also being that the distribution received 94% only in the month of May. Now, it talks about the challenges that need to be addressed. It talks about that attention needs to be given to ensuring food support focus should be on the risk groups, all kinds of risk groups, including disability, including it should reach the HIV affected people, displaced people, refugees, orphans, children. All should be at heart of leave no one behind. Under the addressing challenges part, it is pointed out that how scale of India's PDS has gone through constant navigation and constant improvement over a period of time, but at the same time points out that access and inclusion among the vulnerable population is something that needs constant improvement as well. Finally, in the way ahead, it talks about the introduction of the One Nation, One Ration Card scheme could be a big game changer. In way ahead, India's food security response, Food for All, also talks about how allowing beneficiaries food entitlements and massive mobile population migration between the states. This is something which needs to be mobilized in a big way so that everyone is covered, so that these schemes also take digitization of supply chain and distribution access to the next level, that also being one of the key areas on a way ahead. It talks about building resilient agriculture which is adaptive to changing weather conditions through introduction of new varieties of crops, because we can see the weather changing patterns day in and day out. Efficient irrigation systems and modules to be developed. Also talks about promotion of crops as per the agro-climate zone. So basically, this is a blueprint for the future in terms of how India's food security response should move from strength to strength, including enhanced efforts to prevent the losses, especially the losses incurred by food wastage. That is also that it has factored in besides advancing food security and nutrition through transforming food systems. And this transformation can take place through United Nations Food Systems Summit, Nutrition for Growth Summit, COP26 on Climate Change Summit. All this, the report says, are or perhaps can be pegged as the instruments of transformation. And as we go to the panelists, let's also tell our viewers that the outcomes of these events, according to this report, they say that they will certainly shape the actions of the second half of the United Nations Decade of Action on Nutrition, which means that the United Nations Food Programme says in many ways that India will play a central role in this transformation and will offer experiences and solutions to address the thought processes and models for more equitable and food secure world. So basically, it says that the world can look up to India when it comes to ensuring food security coverage for one and all. And that's the talking point tonight we have for you in Focus tonight. We talk about India's food security program, lessons for the world. And to do so, we have an extremely high-powered panel today. And yes, we have Sudhanshu Pandey, Secretary Food and Public Distribution from Government of India, joining us on the show, and Mr. Bishow Parajuli himself joining us on this exclusive edition of Newsnight. He's a representative and country head of the World Food Programme India. And just to simplify it further, so that paper, we tried to do that explainer on that. What do you think has clicked for India's targeted PDS? You talked about targeted PDS and how world can look up to India in terms of taking lessons from us. Mr. Parajuli.
Thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you very much for having me. I think you have explained extremely well the perspective I put in the context of that opinion piece in the Hindu. I think India is far ahead in many fronts. That's why I point out the world can learn from India, and India can set an example going forward as well. Number one, by law, you have made a provision in India to have access to food to everyone. And this massive public distribution system, which covers over 800 million people, is not a small thing. And, I have visited myself in a number of states, and I've witnessed how effectively these programs are run. There may be challenges here and there, but there has been a constant improvement. And then also, additionally, two elements I didn't touch in this article is you have this another massive midday school program,
yes, midday meal program. Yes.
Yeah, midday meal program. And then you also have this integrated child development program. So these three programs cover close to 1 billion people. So nowhere in the world you can imagine this scale of operation. And more so in the context of this COVID response, when the people were, staying at home, lost their livelihood and earning opportunities, they were doubling up the supplies and the, effective measure to transport and advanced planning. I think these were all excellent examples of effective response from the Government of India authorities, and in particular, lead from the food ministries.
Yes, in fact, you've talked about the food ministry, and we have Honorable Secretary, in fact, joining us live on the show. Mr. Pandey, would you like to add to that? And there were a lot of challenges also. But before we talk about the challenges, let's talk about that one element, very crucial element of entitlement, Atmanirbhar Bharat, tranches of packages, and Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana, and how during pandemic-induced stress, it was ensured that food reaches all. Mr. Pandey.
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Parajuli has given the right context. We run one of the world's largest food security program, and not many people actually realize that what kind of effort goes behind these operations. These are operations which are spread over 36 states and union territories of India. The transportation every day, the kind of logistics and supply chains have to be maintained. are massive. And during this pandemic alone, roughly about 20,000 rakes of rail movement, we have carried food grains from one part of the country to another. And this supply of food, we used all modes of transport, rail, road, air, and waterways. And all these transport modes were used to carry these food grains to about 5.5 lakh fair price shops spread across country.
Right.
And during this period, we used COVID protocol in the time of distribution at each of these shops, and still carried out bioauthentication using all safety protocols, so that food reaches the right kind of people who are actually entitled for this food grain. So this is something which is unprecedented, and the response has been very robust, very quick, and very sharp. A very large machinery of the central and the state governments, they worked in tandem and ensured that the food grains that Government of India is giving, actually doubling the supplies during this pandemic, reaches them.
Migration between the states, the report has specifically talked about the massive mobile population, food entitlements of these beneficiaries, and it says that in the month of May itself, it reached 94%. Well,
that's right.
Yes.
That's right. Actually, now it has the number has reached almost 95%, and for the month of May and June, the average is going to be over 94%. And during this period, the One Nation, One Ration card, which is essentially the portability of the entitlement, has also shown tremendous performance. Almost 1.5 to 1.6 crore transactions are happening every month. And during this COVID period alone, almost 19 crore transactions which are portable in nature have happened. And ever since this program started, we have conducted almost 28 crore portable transactions, through which over 20,000 crore food grain subsidy has been passed on to various beneficiaries. So this is a very mammoth and
mammoth
huge
exercise.
Yes, exercise.
Yes. Let me quickly get in a word from Mr. Parajuli also. You know, while we talk about how food entitlements and the way we kind of tried to take the public distribution system of the country to the next level during the pandemic hit times, your report also talks about how India is going to be playing a very crucial and decisive role in the second half of the UN Decade of Action on Nutrition. You know that India being the driver of the transformation is, I think, that we Indians should celebrate.
You know, indeed, I think in the last 30, 40 years, you know, I went to agriculture universities in the 70s, late 70s in Punjab. And then since then, in the last 40 years, I have seen, and now I come back to India after 40 years, and I've seen that massive improvement in productivity, agricultural production. The point you mentioned that, you know, India has 300 million tons is producing, has 100 million tons in its stock, and now exporting 20 million, you just mentioned. It is feeding nearly 1 billion people. These are great examples for any country to learn from. Now, of course, there are constant challenges because of the climate change. There are issues related to nutrition. There are issues related to also these losses, the point you mentioned. So I think it will be the next step of transformation. And India can really set an example and lead in this process. And I would also say that the point you mentioned about before, the COVID has really risen hunger. 811 million people are expected to be not able to feed themselves. And 41 million people are the verge of, you know, starvation and famine sort of thing. With India's success, I think India can really play a very important role in supporting this part of response.
If we could quickly touch upon the challenges also. I'm sorry I'm interrupting you here, but we need to talk about the obstructions, challenges. It can never be that easy, where you have basically also touched upon minimizing the food wastage, distribution, ensuring supply chain, efficient irrigation systems, etc. Mr. Parajuli, and then we'll take a final comment from Mr. Pandey.
Okay, thank you very much. I think the improvement through One Nation, One Card is really a great example. That's why I call it a game-changing idea. And you know, migrating population from one state to another can use that and easily access. Of course, we need to do some work to make it 100% functional. There are still challenges, so that's why I put that as a way forward. The second point is in relation to climate change and adaptation.
Yes.
We have seen constant flood, cyclone, and other things. So moving towards, you know, different varieties and also reducing excessive use of water in certain part of the country, because water is going to be scarce. So it's important, and including, like, you know, India is taking a lead in promoting millets, traditional crop. 2023 is called the year of millet. So really, you know, promoting these values and local level of consumption, local level of Atmanirbhar, and finally the issue of the losses. It is a big concern.
Okay.
I think we need to really make a big effort to reduce losses at the farm level, to the transportation level, and then storage, and finally on the table, because there is losses at every stages.
Okay.
Losses means excessive, you know, waste of resources, and also missing those who, you know, would have consumed with the losses. So we need to save that for the future.
I'm sure government already has factored in that bit as well. And Mr. Pandey, would you like to add to that and your final message, please?
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's a very important point that we minimize losses, whether in storage in the godown or in the transit, or even when it is being carried from the farm level. So coming to the food grains, which are a very sizable part of the production, you will be very happy to know that Government of India has been working very hard, and our storage losses have come down to 0.003%.
Okay.
Which is a very, very remarkable achievement.
Yes.
Our transit losses have come down to about 0.23% of the total quantities that we handle. We handle roughly about 1,000 lakh metric ton of food grains, both wheat and rice combined. There is still a challenge with regard to the perishable commodities, which are fruits, vegetables, for which also a massive program for developing cold chain and the cold supply chain is underway. And we are modernizing all our storage facilities. We are undertaking a massive program of silos development,
okay,
where the storage losses further will come down and quality of storage will improve.
All right. On that note, thank you very much, Mr. Sudhanshu Pandey, Secretary, Food and Public Distribution, Government of India. And many thanks, Mr. Bishow Parajuli, Representative in Country, Director, World Food Programme, India. Both of you gentlemen, thanks for joining us in that exclusive discussion.